Thanks a lot, Dr. Kumar, for your kind words. And also, let me start by thanking Dr. Mahapatra, uh, who is the one who actually brought me here. Sorry, I can't be physically in Odisha, but I'll try to do justice with this new technology here. The topic that we have picked up is towards inclusive and sustainable growth. That's what I'm going to talk about for half an hour or so. Uh, there's a lot of talk today of 7.3% rate of growth in 23, 24, likely to be again 7% growth 24, 25. And the existing government claims that for the last 3 years and coming year, hopefully 4 years, it will be overall growth of more than 7%. That's a very commendable growth process. The issue that we need to talk about is whether this 7% growth overall is sustainable over a longer period. And what about the inclusiveness of this growth? And when we talk about inclusiveness, we need to look at which sector engages the largest share of the workforce, and that's agriculture. 45.8% of the workforce in the country is engaged in agriculture, and that's the reason we want to focus a little bit more on agriculture. But before I get into the issues within agriculture and issues of sustainability, uh, nobody can avoid reading what's going on, the music in the ears nowadays between the white paper and the black paper. There are two papers that have come out in the last 1 week. One by the government, which is saying a white paper on uh, what an economy they inherited from the UPA and how they have turned it around uh, into a very rosy picture. I think I will be not doing justice if I don't read both the papers, and I'm sure most of you have read those both papers by the Congress. It's a so-called Nyayakal, and the NDA paper says everything is rosy. As a professional economist, we feel nothing is either white or black. There are different shades of gray in between. And I was looking at what has happened during the 10 years of the UPA government and 10 years of NDA government now. And let's start with some interesting things about growth. The growth GDP, which is the first parameter that most of us take, during the UPA period, let's call the Dr. Manmohan Singh period, by the new series is 6.8% per annum. But at that time, there was no new series, so they used to go by the old series with 2004-5 base at factor cost. And if you look at the old series, their growth rate on an average was 7.7% per annum. The NDA, these 10 years of Modi period, the growth rate in GDP, including this year's 23-24, comes to 5.8%. One can say why it has come up and what were the factors at that time, external factors, and so on and so forth. But this is something interesting that the first major parameter of growth in the economy is literally missing in the white paper. So I thought better let me put it on the table what has happened on the growth process. The other macro variable normally we take into consideration is what is happening to inflation in the economy. And inflation, if you look at during the Manmohan Singh period, UPA, 10 years, the average rate of inflation was 8.2%. Food inflation was raging at 9.2%, whereas during the Modi period till day, it's about 5.1% overall CPI inflation, and food inflation is actually 5%. So roughly 5% versus 8 to 9% inflation during the UPA period. So the UPA period on growth front was at least 1 percentage point higher by the new series and almost 2 percentage points higher by the old series compared to the NDA period. But on inflation front, they are almost 3 to 4 percentage points off compared to this. One more variable, and I'm told Dr. Govindaraj is sitting here, so he would be looking at more into the fiscal deficit situation. And fiscal deficit during, on an average, during Manmohan Singh period was 6.9%, whereas now average is about 8%. So who is handling the economy better? I leave it to all of you. One more variable that I feel is very critical, and that has not been discussed as much in literature, but I feel the biggest achievement of reforms. You would recall 1991, the crisis. It came primarily out of the foreign exchange reserves. We had only $1.4 billion at that time. And today, the latest that I read last week was $16 billion that we have. How it progressed, if you take what was on March 2004, when the new government literally came in, and it was 113 billion at that time. And during the 10 years when they left by March 2014, it was 304 billion. So that's about 169% increase during the 10 years of UPA period. Now it's, if you look at January data, it's a 616 billion. That's about 103% increase. But overall, in absolute terms, it's about $312 billion. Why I put it on the table is if you want a sustainable growth, then you should have enough buffer against any external shocks. Whether the oil prices go through the roof in a war situation or any other major thing happens, then external shocks, whether it was the financial crisis of 2008 or the wars in between, then we need to have ample buffer. I think in the literature on sustainable growth process, this has not been given as much priority as it should have been. And I personally feel that the biggest achievement of the economic reform since 1991, from $1.4 billion to $616 billion, this is one of the biggest achievements of the economic reform, irrespective of which government has come in, and this has been going forward. But as I said, for us, the most critical part is the inclusiveness. What is the nature of inclusive growth? And I look at agriculture very closely. And I find that during the UPA period, the growth rate in agriculture was 3.5% per annum on an average. And it remains the same, 3.5% during the NDA period, 10 years, including this year. This year has been bad, actually, 1.8% per annum as per the first advanced estimate of the government. So if you include this year's, and so it's 3.5% flat for 20 years. I remember Professor Raj Krishna, my teacher in Delhi School of Economics at that time, and he proverbially said, 3.5% is the Hindu rate of growth. It doesn't change whosoever comes, it remains the same. So the agriculture has been growing at 3.5% for 20 years. Now, it's not bad, but it's not good enough. Uh, it's not bad because it gives us sufficient food so that we are not in a situation of ship to mouth as we used to be in 1960s and early 70s. But situation on food security as far as availability of food is concerned, that's we have achieved that more or less. I think we are the only country in the world, perhaps, that is giving free wheat and rice to more than 800 million people. And sometimes we take pride in saying, oh, we have so much food that we can afford to give free. And then on the other hand, we say, oh, poverty has been declining in India. It used to be more than 60%, and now it's 11%. Whether you take Niti's multidimensional poverty index, or you take the income poverty of the World Bank, $2.15 per day per capita. Whichever the definition you take, the extreme poverty in the country hovers around 11% today, as per whatever the credible sources of data are available to us. Now, if 11% have poverty and we want to give free food to almost 60% population, 800 million plus, then there is a question mark. Is our policy in line? Or is it, I can understand you want to give free food to people who are extremely poor and cannot afford, Antodaya, so-called, what Prime Minister Vajpayee used to say. But to the rest of it, is it a revdi? That's a dole? Is it a political, dole for votes? What is it? I think as economists, we need to question these things, because I find rationalization of subsidies is extremely critical if the India growth story has to continue. And I'll come back to this. Food subsidy today, 2,12,000 crores in the revised estimate of 23-24 is the biggest subsidy in a way, and it's bigger than the budget of the Agriculture Ministry. And I'll come back to this when we talk about sustainability issues. The other biggest subsidy is 1,88,000 crores of fertilizers. You add food subsidy, fertilizer subsidy, and PM Kisan, you find 4.5 lakh or 4,60,000 crores in a budget of 47 lakh crores roughly. It's 10%. The unfortunate thing is that these subsidies are not delivering the full potential of the money being spent. I can bet that we can get much more mileage from the same resources in terms of growth, in terms of inclusiveness, in terms of sustainability of the growth process, if we rationalize and repurpose and realign these subsidies, taking other factors into consideration. And that I'll come to that in a minute. So, what is the issue we are talking about? In terms of inclusiveness, we see agriculture has not changed 20 years. So whether this growth, this government or the previous government, it doesn't matter much. It's the same story, 3.5% per annum. What worries me most is the last 5 years, the real wages in agriculture or non-farm rural wages are almost flat, stagnant, or in fact, real wages, if you deflate the nominal wages by CPI, have marginally declined. And this decline started even before the COVID. That's something that we need to take note of what was happening at that time. I can understand the backward, reverse migration during COVID period, and whether it took 1 year or 2 years to come out of COVID period. But till day, the real wages in agriculture and in non-farm rural uh, are still lower than what they were in 2018-19. And that should be a cause of worry, because that is what inclusiveness of the growth process means. They are at the bottom rung of the economy, and if their real incomes are not going up, then there should be a cause for worry and concern, and relook at the policies we have been following. So from that angle, I don't think this Manrega employment, which is a fallback system, and we had kept a budget of 60,000 crores and landed up with 86,000 crores in 23-24, actually reflects a distress situation in the productive part of agriculture and rural economy. So if we say, oh, we have spent so much on Manrega and we have spent so much on food subsidy free, actually those are signs of distress, because they are not getting anything, productive, where they can really do their own job and earn enough to feed themselves and have. So to me, these two signs of very high subsidy on food and very high expenditure on Manrega, that means our policies are not in line with a more productive and sustainable growth, especially in agriculture. And I'll come to some of those policies in a minute. Let me focus on the sustainability part a little bit. And when we talk about sustainability in agriculture, uh, let me start with something interesting lately in 2024. World Economic Forum. There was a survey. You remember, know everybody. All these big business leaders and many political leaders and many thinkers come together in World Economic Forum and look at where the globe is going and what needs to be done. Our delegation was led by, Madam Smriti Irani, Honorable Minister, Women and Child Development, and of course they push towards women led development in a way, and global alliances coming on that issue. But 1,490 leaders were surveyed, asking them what are the major factors which you feel are the threat to the world economy. And the biggest factor, number one at the top, was neither a recession nor Ukraine type of wars. It was actually extreme weather events. The topmost risk factor to the global system is the extreme weather events, as per 1,490 business and political and thinker leaders who got together in World Economic Forum. If that is true, and I do feel that climate change is really on our head, knocking on our door, then which sector is going to be impacted most? It's going to be first and foremost agriculture. If the temperature goes up by 1 degree in North India, 1 degree centigrade increase, we will lose 5% of wheat in this country. And this February, March is a very critical period, because the wheat is in the fields, it's green, and the grain is being formed. If for 1 week there is a spike in temperature, we are down by at least 5 to 7 million tons of wheat production. Okay, so this extreme, even a spike for a week, can cause havoc. And if the temperature goes up by 2 degrees, which many of the climate people are saying that we have lost the window of controlling it within 1.5, we may end up, even if now we awaken and we get going in a big way towards mitigation, we are going to end up by 2 degrees temperature increase. If that is the case, are we ready to face that type of a thing in agriculture? What is happening in agriculture? Are we investing enough to create heat resistant varieties, for example? And that requires more resources, and from where the resources will come. When we talk about sustainability in agriculture, four things I need to flag: what our policies are and what is the impact of those policies on soil, on water, especially groundwater, on air, that is the greenhouse gas emissions, and what is happening to biodiversity. Let's take the case of soil. Our soil is there is a deficiency of carbon and micronutrients in our soils. We have been subsidizing urea to almost 80 to 90%. Nobody knows better than Dr. Mahapatra sitting there, who has been the secretary earlier of fertilizers. And if we give so much of subsidy, 80 to 90% subsidy on urea, the farmers tend to apply much more higher doses of urea, nitrogen, vis-a-vis even P and K, and forget about the micronutrients. As a result, our soils have become deficient in zinc, boron. Zinc deficiency in the soils has led to deficiency of zinc in wheat and rice. And this deficiency of zinc in wheat and rice leads to stunting amongst children. So there is a huge issue of how our policies are adversely impacting the first basic resource of nature, namely the soil. And if we don't get that right, and I would hold primarily policies as the culprit, that we have very irrational policies. 1,88,000 crores on chemical fertilizers and being subsidized to the tune of 80 to 90% nitrogen. P and K, they have a subsidy of about 20 to 30%. So the entire NPK ratio is totally upside down compared to what the recommendations are. So when farmer applies more granular urea, the plant is not absorbing more than 35% of that nitrogen. Rest is going in the environment. It is creating nitrous oxide, which is 273 times the carbon equivalence. So you can imagine that we are subsidizing, or that nitrogen goes into the groundwater, leaches there, and nitrate content, so that the groundwater becomes non-potable. So in a way, we are subsidizing so much to create all this poison in the environment. Is that a rational policy? As economists, I think we need to raise our voice on this issue, that environment, the wrong policies are creating a mess in the greenhouse gas emissions, which will hit back agriculture adversely. I think we need to rationalize, but the underlying thing is the farmers should not be the losers. So there are other ways of rationalizing these subsidies. We can give them on per hectare basis, a cash transfer, for example, and free up the prices of NPK. And then relative prices will give right signals to the farmers how to use NPK. And then one little thing on fertilizers I want to say, since Dr. Mahapatra is sitting. When the subsidy system started in agriculture, fertilizer particularly in 1977, he would recall, the grain response to a dosage of fertilizer, if you apply 1 kilogram of NPK, the fertilizer, it used to give more than 10 kilograms of grain. That was the response ratio. But today, that response ratio has come down to just 2. You apply 1 kilogram of fertilizer, you get only 2 kilograms of grain. This entire response ratio that has been coming down is primarily because of the wrong usage of NPK that we are using, and of course, some research that needs to be done. So you have the biggest expenditure within agriculture, 1,88,000 crores, called the fertilizer subsidy, which is more than the entire allocation of Ministry of Agriculture. This subsidy is actually with the Ministry of Chemicals and fertilizers, which is not directly dealing with farmers, but the agriculture ministry, which deals with farmers, doesn't have access to this. But ultimately, it's the cabinet that has to rationalize this subsidy. What is happening to our water? Water, if you look at the green revolution belt within India, groundwater in Punjab, for example, has gone down by more than 9 meters in the last 20 years. And in the constituency of the current Chief Minister of Punjab, uh, that particular district, groundwater has gone down by 25 meters in 20 years. This is an alarming situation. More than a meter a year, uh, the water table has been coming down. And what is the reason of that? Rice cultivation. Punjab farmers are hooked to wheat and rice cycle. It was very much needed when the Green Revolution came and procurement system was built on that. But today rice is being produced everywhere and with reasonable good productivity. Punjab rice, which takes about 22 to 25 irrigations, 1 hectare of rice creates 5 tons of greenhouse gas emissions carbon equivalents. 5 tons per hectare because of the methane that is generated when the flood waters, flooding of the fields is done. On top of then the machinery and then uh, all the carbon that comes out through nitrogen, high doses, 250 kilograms of fertilizers that are being applied in Punjab. So the fertilizer subsidy coupled with free power in Punjab or Haryana for that matter, more or less this northwest belt, which used to be the food security belt of India, is creating an environmental mess today. And how long it will continue, people, very wise people from Punjab, Professor S.S. Joel and others have been saying since mid 80s that Punjab should have diversified away from this. But this entire cycle of assured procurement, we were looking at 3 years of Punjab procurement of rice. Punjab procures more rice than the production of rice in Punjab. So rice is coming even from Bihar to Punjab to be sold because they have a procurement system they are set up. So, and this is all hooked to the food subsidy because the food subsidy that we are giving, free food, is basically wheat and rice. And then we have a millet mission. If you want to give free wheat and rice to the masses and then you are asking them consume millets, the two things don't go together. You better go for cash transfers. Ask them whatever they want to buy, they can buy, or give them food coupons, 20 commodities from wheat, rice to millets to pulses to oilseeds to milk and even eggs. They can buy. In fact, out of the 500,000 fair price shops, you can designate at least 50,000 shops which as nutritious hubs. India has achieved more or less its food security as far as the availability of food is concerned, but it is far away from the nutritional security question. And therefore, it's not producing more food, it is producing more nutritious food. That is a challenge of today and tomorrow. And for that, we need to rationalize these policies, especially this food policy of free wheat and rice, where zinc deficiency is almost 30% in the wheat and rice. So either you biofortify those wheat and rice with more zinc or iron and other things, or you allow this food subsidy basket to have more commodities. And the best way would be issuing some sort of food coupons and giving them a choice for 20 nutritious commodities to buy. Last thing I want to talk about, sustainability is biodiversity has not been talked much in the literature and the discussion and debates. And this is also one pillar that we need to take care of, I think. Uh, Unfortunate thing is that the success of one or two varieties in agriculture leads to their spread for millions of hectares, displacing the agro biodiversity, within agriculture. And therefore, we need to have a balance how to protect those the diversity within agriculture, not only within wheat or rice, so that we have ample varieties within that, but also across crops. When you give a higher preference in the procurement system and in the PDS system to wheat and rice, then farmers tend to grow only wheat and rice much more. And the area, if you look at so-called coarse grains, earlier we used to call it orphan crops, and now they are called nutritious millets. But you look at the area, how the area has been coming down over years. And that's because of the policy which was favoring wheat and rice over any other grains. So, to me, let me try to come to some conclusion so that we can have some discussion. India is able to feed itself broadly. And there are very success stories from green revolution to white revolution to blue revolution and pink revolution, whatnot. Overall growth in agriculture, 3.5% is not bad, but it's not good enough to lift people from agriculture to other areas, and therefore this transition needs to be made. And the policies within agriculture need to incorporate beyond the food security concern towards nutritional security and sustainability. And sustainability is not only adaptation to climate change, which is already on our head, but also mitigation. And that's not only crop sector but also the livestock sector. I didn't talk, don't have much time to get into the livestock sector, but there is a big issue. We have bovine population, largest in the world, 302 million bovine cattle, and they are producing a lot of methane, and half of them males who used to work in the fields are no more needed because of farm mechanization. And therefore we need to go for newer technologies. uh, there is a technology called sex sorted semen technology, which can be used for artificial insemination to reduce the number of males as the next crop of livestock comes. So there are technologies, but innovations in policies are critical to incorporate the concerns of nutrition and climate change and mitigation within the system. Government of India has not been very, I would say, stepping up on the mitigation part. They don't want to commit any mitigation in agriculture in the international forums. What they are asking for is more money from the developed countries for adaptation. I think the victims will be we, not them. And therefore, we need to step up the gears and look at not only adaptation but also mitigation simultaneously within agriculture. If we have to feed 1.44 billion today, who are going to be 1.66 billion by 2050. I'll stop here, and I would welcome any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Your lecture is actually thought-provoking, and it has covered almost every area. But message is actually clear that we have to be serious, both from growth point of view as well as sustainability point of view. Now it is open to the floor. We can take some selective question, maybe 3 or 4. Yes.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
You can come otherwise here. That will be better. Till that mic comes, you
Hello.
can come here.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Please go ahead with your question.
Thank you so much, Ashok Gulati, sir. My concern is that if we talk about agricultural scenario in Indian context, I will say that the low returns, the low remuneration of to the farmers, it is because of the low social acceptance of agriculture that. And it is like despite being a crucial sector of Indian economy, which promises food security, the engagement in agriculture is out of compulsion and it is not out of choice. Like if we see, there is a very skeptic attitude to the way we see agricultural sector. Like in order for a country to develop, the share of agriculture it has to be reduced, and also that no one wants their children to engage in that. No one wants their children to be a farmer. So, can you suggest some measures so that the way we see agriculture it changes the how we see agriculture in a more positive way? Otherwise, it becomes a matter. Otherwise, it is like a hypocrisy that we are suggesting policies for the farmers, but we don't want our children to engage in that occupation. So, can you suggest some measures?
Sir, it is not audible, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Now it is audible.
Okay. Do you want to pick up other questions also, or should I respond one by one?
Hello. Hello.
So can I go ahead?
Good morning.
One more question, sir. One more question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Good morning, sir. I'm Shuvangi. I'm a student of agricultural economics. What I want to ask you about the point that you mentioned about sustainability and the issue of crop production in Punjab and Haryana. So, if we see because of the intensification of agriculture and because we are highly ambitious in terms of food security, the issue of stubble burning is very high. That also creates a pollution impact on Delhi and the nearby states. Now, as you told, we cannot especially ignore the biodiversity aspect of agriculture. So, do you think any kind of payments for ecosystem services is actually possible? Because ICR has tried to suggest this scheme on a pilot scale, but I don't think particularly the payments to these farmers to stop stubble burning is implemented in a very nice way or in a larger scale. So that would be my question.
Is there any other third question?
Is there one more question here, sir? Mike, please, Jugal, sir. No. Okay, sir. I think we can take only these two questions, and it is over to you, sir.
These are very good questions, both of them. Let me start with the first one. We don't want our children to become farmers, and we are talking about agriculture policies. As the economy grows, all the world over experience is people leave agriculture. They go to higher productivity jobs. Now, to get to higher productivity jobs in the non agriculture sector, what you need is skill, education. So, if you have better skills and better education, then hopefully you can get some jobs in the non agriculture sector where the remuneration will be much higher than that of in agriculture. Unfortunately, our non agriculture sector has not been growing as fast, or the labor intensive part is not increasing. Normally, in many of the countries, whether it was China or Vietnam or even Bangladesh today, it is the textiles all the way up to manufacturing. Even though Bangladesh doesn't produce enough cotton, they import from us, and Vietnam imports from us, and they are exporting more garments than us. So that's where the labor employment is created. I think we have failed on that front. But all said and done, my suggestion is, we have to spend a lot on the skill formation for the so-called new India or new economy as we progress further. Right now, we have 45.8% of the workforce dependent on 17-18% of the overall GDP, because the contribution of agriculture to overall GDP is today about 17%. So that process has to go, that structural change has to come, and only then, once people start moving out, this declining average holding size from 2.3 hectares, today it has come down to 1.08 hectares, that will see a reversal and the holding size will start increasing. This is what happened in China, this is what happened in most of the countries. So skill formation is the way to go, and focusing on labor intensive non-agriculture sectors like textiles and garments to get going, and giving some priority to them. On the other question, which is the stubble burning and pollution, and can there be a payment for eco services? Extremely good question. During the period of November, Delhi becomes a gas chamber. The AQI hovers around 400 at that time. That's the worst amongst any capital in the world. So it is actually, the entire Delhi should be going for a candle march at India Gate at that time. There are studies by Chicago University that people living in NCR, their life expectancy is going down by 11.9 years. Roughly 12 years of life expectancy is coming down. I worked it out, which means about 5 to 6 million people are choking to death, which is literally so high. It is as high as perhaps what had happened just before the Second World War, in Germany. It's literally a genocide. So we need to do something about it. And what is keeping all this? Stubble burning is only one part of the story. As I said, in rice, in Punjab, Haryana belt, it starts with methane. When the water is flooding the fields, it's methane that is coming out continuously during that period. On top of that, all the machinery that is being used. On top of that, the nitrous oxide that is coming out from massive use, 250 kilograms of fertilizer consumption per hectare is being used in rice in Punjab. And on the top of all this is the stubble burning part. So there are 4 layers of this. And when you add all these, it's 5 tons per hectare of greenhouse gas emission that is coming out. Now, environmental services. If you look at the subsidy only on power and fertilizer in Punjab, Punjab farmers' profitability, I'm talking profitability of a Punjab farmer, and this is based on cost of cultivation data of Government of India, 90,000 rupees per hectare is the profitability in rice cultivation of the farmer. Out of that, 30,000 is coming from this subsidy, from power subsidy and fertilizer subsidy. Now, if you are asking them to switch to pulses, which we are net importer, or say oil seeds, which we are net importers, they don't use 25 irrigations, they need only 2 irrigations. They are nitrogen fixing, they don't need that much of urea and that much of subsidy. So you will save power subsidy, you will save urea subsidy and all that, fertilizer. That 30,000 rupees saving can you give to the farmer, let's say 25,000 rupees per hectare if he switches from rice to pulses or oilseeds or even millets? This is the real reward. This is green credits or payment for eco services or whatever you call it. The fact is, our policies are distorting the basket and creating environmental mess. And we need to realign, repurpose our policies, taking into account and giving a crop neutral incentive structure. As economists, what we should do is crop neutral incentive structures. All crops should get a similar. Why only wheat and rice is being procured? Why not other things? Right. So if the market risk is higher in others, farmers don't want to go for it. So Punjab farmer, they say, I'm ready to grow, maize, which will need in the Kharif maize only 3-4 irrigations. But government should assure me that they will buy everything. Now, how many things government will buy? So the whole system is hooked towards wheat and rice because we committed ourselves in the public distribution system for wheat and rice. So the process of change needs to start from there. Give them food coupons. First, do we need to give free food to 800 million people? During Vajpayee's government, he had 3 categories. He said Antodaya will get free, BPL, below poverty line, will have to pay 50% of the MSP. And APL, above poverty line, will have to pay 90% of the MSP. So it was linked to that. But you know how the populism, the previous government in 2013, just before elections, came up with this National Food Security Act. And in the act, they put, oh, we'll give at 3 rupees, 2 rupees, 1 rupee. And it said for 3 years. But now we are stuck with that. It's 10 years and the price, instead of going up from 3 rupees, it has gone to 0. So, and this is the biggest subsidy, 212,000 crores of subsidy, whether this is a dole or a help to the most vulnerable, you decide yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. You are the institution and constitution of agricultural economy in the country. So there is no dearth of question in this house, but I think we have to close here. And on behalf of the Odisha Economic Association, we are indebted to you for your valuable time you have spared us, and your lecture has actually opened many research arena among our research scholars, including me and many other senior people having similar interests. Sir, thank you very much for...
Thank you for having me, and thank you to Dr. Jugal Patra, and greetings to my friends Govinda and others who are sitting there. Thank you. Thank you.
Professor Ratikant sir for effectively conducting this section, and I would also extend my thanks to Professor Ashok Gulati sir for enlightening us.